Hey everyone, today I'm joined by Colby Roy. Today we're going to be talking about the rise and fall of the 5 New York Mafia families. In this video, me and Colby talk about the high-ranking mobsters that put a dent in the Mafia, such as Scrappa, Anthony Casso, Angelo Ruggiero, Sammy The Bull, and many others. If you want to get more videos like this, please hit subscribe. And without further ado, let's get into this video.
So basically, for the past few decades, Adrian, it's kind of been a mix of things. First of all, way back when Cosa Nostra first started, there was not the technological advances that there is now, and especially when it comes to law enforcement. So really, law enforcement in the past couple decades has taken different measures to reach the Cosa Nostra families and bringing them almost down to their knees. So you have things like undercover people that the FBI sends in and local police sends in, undercover agents like Joe Pastone, our good friend Giovanni Rocco, obviously, who infiltrated the DeCavalcante crime family of New Jersey most recently. And particularly stuff that brought down the mob was the RICO statutes. And for those people who are very familiar with what that is, a lot of that was heavily favored by people like Rudy Giuliani once he really got the commission down. And then we can talk about things like, wiretaps and bugs and stuff. So we talked about the bugs in the Ravenite, the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club during the John Gotti era. And of course, what happened with Angelo Ruggiero, who was a big player in the Gambino crime family. As you know, Adrian, his bugs that they put in his house really alluded to him being a part of a big heroin ring that guys like Paul Castellano were probably not privy to at the time and would have made him very unhappy. So that type of evidence led to more and more evidence for the government to say, hey, you know what? We have evidence that Angelo Ruggiero, who's a well-known person in the Gambino crime family, is talking about heroin rings with various members of the Gambino crime family. So now we have evidence to say, okay, we get a family involved in heroin. What else are they involved in? And it was sort of the same thing that happened with Paul Castellano, who, like I said, he got wiretapped, he got bugged, all these other things. So basically, when it comes to how the government did it, the government's done it through surveillance. They've done it through wiretaps. They've done it through tapes at the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club, like I said, the Ravenite Club, and just all that stuff combined. And also, Adrian, something I didn't mention too was cooperating witnesses and informants as well. So you got guys like Sammy Gravano that flipped, which some say probably was very influential at bringing down the Gambino crime family. You have guys who went to the witness protection program who also provided information, like Gaspipe Casso that we've talked about before. And just all those things, Adrian, sort of really played a role in bringing down Cosa Nostra as we know it now.
Yeah, no, that's true, man. They have so many avenues of different things that they use to
Oh, dude, you bet.
to bring these guys down,
You
So
bet, bro.
to go into specific instances, we can talk about, Joe Pastone, going in and undercover and becoming a undercover agent, in the Bonanno crime family. So, what do you kind of know about that?
Joe Pastone is one of the most well-known undercover FBI agents in the history of this country. He is on par with people like Jack Falcone, aka Jack Garcia, who had a infiltration of a mafia family as well. A very guy that we're well aware of, Giovanni Rocco, more currently infiltrating the DeCavalcante crime family. So Joe Pastone infiltrated the Bonanno crime family, which in turn led to a lesser extent some of the downfall of the Colombo crime family as well. And Joe Pastone infiltrated the Bonanno crime family under the tutelage of Lefty Ruggiero, which again, Lefty Ruggiero was a big player in the Bonanno crime family, worked with guys such as Sonny Black, again, very well-known guy, and in a very feared family. The Bonanno crime family was no joke. If Joe Pastone would have made wrong moves or would have said something to, I guess, endanger himself, he could have ended up killed. Now, that operation obviously is called Operation Donnie Brasco. So basically, that is what that movie Donnie Brasco is based on. That movie with Johnny Depp in it, all very accurate, all very true. It's his story and his recollection of what he did to invade and infiltrate the Bonanno crime family. And then to give another example, like I said, is Giovanni Rocco. So Giovanni Rocco is a more recent instance. And, when I say recent, his infiltration was not really super far back. And a lot of the recent developments that have happened with him was that he infiltrated the DeCavalcante crime family of New Jersey, put away guys like Charlie Stango, who was a well-known capo in the crime family at the time. And he put away several others at the same time, too. And the operation with Giovanni Rocco obviously covered places like New Jersey. They had the DeCavalcante crime family at the time was also doing operations in Nevada and all sorts of things like that. So the government has definitely had a lot of success sending in undercover agents to infiltrate these crime families and to give us, the public, an insight as to how these families operate.
Right. Yeah, they definitely do. So they have their ways to, to go about and get these guys. So, even they have times where, they got to pull out because things get too hectic or, get too heated. So in Joe Pastone's, situation, why'd they pull him out?
Well, it was kind of the thing where it was basically just time. I feel like, in my opinion, he got them what they wanted, and they knew that the longer they would have kept him in, the fact is, at some point. So one thing about the wise guys, and something that you'll read throughout history, Adrian, the more you get more into this, is that these guys can sense if somebody's a cop or not. These guys have that sort of street smart where they can pick up on if somebody is a cop or not. So I think after a while, even as much trust as Pastone had with those guys, it's my opinion that the longer the cops would have kept him in there, the more danger he would have been in. And the fact is, like I said, he already infiltrated a very, very powerful crime family. And then it's pretty much evidenced that when it comes to what Pastone did in infiltrating the Bonanno family, it gave law enforcement the confidence that they can send guys in and that these families can be infiltrated and can be taken down. All it takes at that time is just a knowledge of how these guys operate, their codes, understanding the rackets that they're involved in. So in my opinion, what the media says, what the reports say, and what I think might be a little bit different, but I think they pulled him out because I think they initially got what they wanted, and they just didn't want to put his life in any further danger. That's how I see that. That's my opinion of it.
In the movie too, he was about to commit a murder. Was that accurate though?
I don't know.
I didn't really hear. I know it was in the movie, but
I don't necessarily know if that's the accurate ending or not, but that's what the movie portrays. And we know how accurate movie endings can be.
Right. Okay. So moving on to the Colombos, the government used, certain people to, kind of infiltrate the mob. This family as well. Obviously they used the RICO Act. Greg Scarpa as well was, a key player in, bringing some of these people down. So, kind of speak on what you know about him and how he took down this family or was a part of taking down a lot of these guys.
So when it comes to Greg Scarpa, Greg Scarpa had a lengthy relationship with the FBI, and Greg Scarpa was also the guy who recruited people like Larry Mazza, who we know very well, you and I, into the family. Now, this was one of the first. Oh, trying to think of how to phrase this. There was books written about Greg Scarpa's relationship with the FBI at the time. That's how controversial this was. Peter Lance, in fact, wrote a book on Greg Scarpa's relationship with the FBI, and what the perception was in the public at the time, who might have been following this case, was once they found out about this, was, geez, the FBI must have given Scarpa permission to commit violent acts. But at the same time, who better to give information about the Colombo crime family than a guy who had massive influence in that family, just as a feared man in general. Like, people did business with Greg Scarpa because they feared him, not because they really liked him or respected him, but they legitimately were afraid of this guy. Like, Greg Scarpa was a very um, was a very capable guy in terms of like violence and what he was willing to do to get his ends met. So that was just one example of how the FBI used somebody inside that life to get them information to really severely impact families like the Colombo crime family, which at one point were a very influential family in Cosa Nostra. And they're still around, all these families, Adrian, are still around to these days. They just operate, in my opinion, at a much smaller scale because they've been wounded by law enforcement, so to speak. You got to figure back then, Adrian, they didn't have the resources that they do nowadays. They had resources back then, but not like they do nowadays. So certain things weren't confirmed. But the general consensus is he was a very, very, very violent guy. No question about it. No question about it. And we've talked with Larry about that too. Like I said, he was willing to be violent to make ends meet, and at the same time, he was playing the role of government cooperator, and he was playing the role of wise guy as well. So he had his hands in both of the cookie jars, and that's what made him even more dangerous. He could get away with a lot of stuff because of that.
Yeah, no, that's true, man.
Yep.
So, he was definitely a key player in taking people down. But moving on to the Gambino family, they had John Gotti. He went to prison. They had Sammy Gravano. He flipped. They got bugged. They bugged. At the beginning of the video, they bugged another member's house, which kind of started the whole commission case. So, kind of talk about that. John Gotti, Sammy the Bull, and the bugs that led up to everybody getting indicted.
Well, something that became common for the government to use against the mob was wiretapping and or bugging the social clubs that the mob used to hang out with. Some of the historians are now saying that the mob's biggest downfall was that they were always at the same location all the time. They were always at these social clubs, and it was predictable where they would be. So all they would have to do, they being the government and the FBI, all that the government and the FBI would have to do was go to these social clubs when they're closed, break in the middle of the night, put a bug in there, and exit as if nothing happened. Now, that said, to your question, Adrian, when it comes to Gotti and the Gambino crime family's demise, some people say that Gotti's demise was his wanting of publicity, his fanfare with the media and the general public. To some extent, that's very true, but to another extent, Angelo Ruggiero had as much to bring down the Gambino family than Gotti himself did. Angelo Ruggiero was caught talking about a heroin ring that he and Gotti were involved in back in the day, where under Paul Castellano's tutelage, that was supposed to be taboo, if you will. That wasn't acceptable. So that gave the FBI further evidence to put bugs in other wise guys' houses. And then, of course, like I said, I know Judge Gleason from being on my show. He wrote a whole book called The Gotti Wars, in which he discusses very, very detailed descriptions of how he got these guys via wiretaps and bugs and all this other stuff. And of course, we all know, those of us who have studied the mob long enough know about the Ravenite. We know about the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club. So basically, they brought down the Gambino crime family sort of the same way as they did a lot of these other guys. They found their hiding spots. They utilized informants and government witnesses. They had people wearing wires. And then, of course, there was the big flip of the Gambino underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano.
And how could you explain how they got him to flip?
They got him to flip because he was upset about stuff that was said on tape about him, that Gotti was saying about him. There was more to it, but ultimately, I think, too, it was a business decision for him. As it is, I think a lot of people who cooperate, no matter which side of the aisle that people might fall on cooperating, he was really pissed and really infuriated about the stuff that was being said about him on tapes that the government had gotten. And what was interesting about Sammy Gravano is right after Sammy Gravano got out of prison and was placed in the witness protection program, he got charged with being a part of a big drug ring, actually. So he Took a while to get back into the legitimate life, but basically, long story short, the information that he gave the government about the inner workings of the Gambino crime family and Cosa Nostra in general really took a huge blow to that life. And but like I said, though, more importantly than that, if you factor in the wiretaps of the social clubs, if you factor in Angelo Ruggiero, and if you factor in John Gotti himself on tape also getting pissed at certain people, the whole thing was just a disaster for them.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, it was definitely the demise of, some of these families, including
Big
that
time.
one.
Big time, bro.
And yeah, so kind of moving on to the Lucchesi family, me and you talked off air, kind of about Anthony Gaspipe Casso, and what would you say that he was able to bring down? Well, kind of had a downfall with this family.
Um, Gas Pipe was kind of a loose cannon. He was known as a very violent guy, and he was just kind of the same way. He was a cooperating witness, and again, like I said, back then there was a pattern of cooperating witnesses. He was a cooperating witness. He provided information into the life that the government needed. But like more importantly, something that was also an equally big blow to the Lucchesi crime family was, of course, Tony Ducks when the whole Mafia commission was put on blast by the RICO statutes. Back then, of course, Tony Ducks was big in the waste industries, in the garbage industries. You really couldn't do any type of operating like that back then in New York unless you went through the Lucchesi crime family for things like that. So basically, like with people like Gaspipe and people like um, Tony Ducks, who Tony Ducks might have had a somewhat different demise in the big scheme of things, but it's kind of the same thing that we're talking about. It's wiretaps. It's using people within the mob itself to give information to the government for potentially lesser sentences. Maybe sometimes they were even paid by the government. Maybe they were given sweetheart deals because of their information. It kind of all ties back into what we're talking about as to how they got wrapped up in this web where law enforcement was able to get them and get them where it hurts.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, with that, like Tony Ducks you were talking about, he ultimately went to prison then for this, and I think he ended up dying there, right?
I think so. Yep. Yep.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, moving on to the last family, Genovese, they kind of had, I'm not too sure, they were known to be a more kind of like a stronger family, right? Or was that the Colombo?
Well, so with the Genovese family, so the Genovese family, actually, believe it or not, in my opinion, today they're probably one of the more stronger mob families. But even they now know that, hey, if they're too loud about things, if they don't keep things on the hush, you know, the government has more surveillance than ever. The government has ways of finding things out, and in my opinion, the government still uses undercover agents. They probably just don't talk about it as much. Now, as far as the Genovese family goes, one of the big bugs was the Palma Boys Club in East Harlem, which was ran by Tony Salerno, of all places. And that club was actually bugged back in 1983. That was one of the bigger situations when it came to the Genovese crime family, and that was all part of the RICO case at the time that was being built. Was that they had all these high-level guys who they had on tape, basically all admitting to the government unknowingly that, hey, we're part of this bigger organization, and we're all involved in sort of the same rings and rackets, and this is what we do. And so, like I said, that was probably one of the bigger wiring or bugging that you can discuss back then when it came to the Genovese crime family was Tony Salerno's East Harlem club that was bugged at the time. And like I said, at that time, that was substantial evidence for the government as well.
Yeah. I mean, so these wiretaps really are able to get them, I mean, so I mean, that's what the RICO law kind of made it more possible for them to, get some proof, and then they can, get these tapes in there without, having, or they can be hidden and stuff, right?
Rico's big thing was that they had Rudy Giuliani behind it. Um, Rudy Giuliani was the prosecutor at the time. Um, Rudy Giuliani's thing was that he felt as if the mob was a stain pretty much on the Italian American culture. And it was something where he didn't view it like certain people in the neighborhoods did. He viewed the mob as like I said, a stain on the Italian American experience, a stain on American culture, and he was willing to go great lengths to put these guys away, and he was willing to go great lengths to just do whatever it took to, well, legally, of course, he was doing whatever it took to just get these guys to a point where they had no other choice but to say, hey, we either have to do things differently or we're going to have a bunch of cooperators, which really is what happened, is that the government incentivized. And again, like I said, people have different views on informants, different views on cooperators. This is just me saying it like it is. The government incentivized mob guys to turn on their fellow mob associates via, like I said, sweetheart deals, being put in the witness protection program to keep their families safe. And sometimes, even in the cases of, the Philadelphia underboss, Phil Linetti, the guy's got a different identity. He's been relocated. Nobody knows where he is. And he, like I said, he's been given pretty much a new life under a different name, different identity. And, pretty much that is the story of really like what brought down the mob over the past few decades. And when you fast forward to today, Adrian, today is a totally different Cosa Nostra than it was before. As you and I have discussed, even off camera, the conversations you and I have had, there's been many instances where we always say they don't do as much violence anymore. They're not really into the violence anymore. And that's because they know that that's really what the government's looking for. The government is really going to target those violent acts. They're going to target the murders. They're going to target the beatings. They're going to target things like that. But at the same time, things are legalized now that are sort of impacting the mob's pocketbooks, if you will, or their paychecks or their checkbooks or banking accounts, whatever you call it. It's impacted because now, sports betting, sports gambling is not really seen taboo in a lot of states anymore. And things like marijuana are legal in a lot of states, and just things like that are cutting into their revenue streams. So they now have to do things differently, and they now have to be careful too, because now people have cameras on their cell phones. People have social media, and kind of interestingly enough, some of the mob guys now use social media, which was kind of interesting because the cops probably watch that very close, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I would imagine so too. I mean, that's what makes everything so much easier, man. You post something on Facebook, they're like, oh, well, he's friends with these people, so they're associated, so if there's something goes down with them, oh, well, now we know he's connected, so that's why it's definitely a different time. It's harder to do crime. I mean, it's just really weird, but that's where things are, and that's just what we gotta adapt to. I mean, as people, I mean, even besides, gangsters and mobsters doing criminal stuff, but we all adapt and we just keep moving. I mean, that we got the power of, doing this, segment right now. So I do appreciate you coming on. Colby, let the people know where they can find your YouTube channel.
True Crime with Colby Roy. That is my channel, you guys. I don't just interview ex mobsters, but I've interviewed quite a few of them. And my channel really is something where I delve deep into the true crime history. But particularly for me, I do it from the law enforcement side, I do it from the criminal side, and I do it from the guys who cover it in the books. Guys like Scott Bernstein that have been covering, true crime stuff forever, for a very, very, very long time. Guys like Doug Century, who, again, been covering various crime topics forever. So for me, on my channel, I get things from all perspectives. Feel free to check it out. And you guys, while we're on this, this would have never been possible without Adrian and his dedication to good content. Adrian is somebody that's got a lot of heart and a lot of soul and a true dedication to hard work as far as finding out what the facts are. So this wouldn't have been possible without him, of course.
What a gentleman. No, I appreciate that, Colby, and that's why I thought you'd be a perfect guest to have on here, man. So I do appreciate that. You guys, I'll put a link in the description of this video for his channel. And, whatever else he wants me to put in there, I'll put in there, Colby. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Absolutely, brother. It's my pleasure.
Well, what'd you guys think? Please comment a key takeaway that you got from this video. Share it with someone that you think will enjoy it. And please hit subscribe if you want to get more videos like this. And one thing I will mention, this was Colby Roy's last video that he did on YouTube. He just took a step back and, wanted to focus on, what he's got going on in life and, pursue other routes. And, we're always going to support him. He's always been so supportive to me. So I really appreciate him giving me his last video. He's got talent. He's really, whatever he puts his mind to, he's really going to do well in. So, if he ever comes out with anything, I'll always support him and you guys can check him out. Colby is definitely on the documentary that I did about the American Mafia. It's a documentary series, so I got him on a few episodes talking, so you for sure will see him there. And if you want to support me and my brand, I got t-shirts, hoodies, beanies, and sweats. At the end of this video, I'll put a playlist of all my other Mafia videos that I've made. Thank you again so much for watching.